We've now got about half an hour or so for Q&A. I will say we're not taking any questions on Brighton Hove Albion Football Club. I will also say that for detailed questions about the plans, the architects are going to stay behind after tonight is concluded, next to the boards, and you'll be able to ask them detailed questions. So with those caveats, please feel free to raise your hands. No, sorry, I should have said, Rabbi Wallach, sorry. There are roving mics, so please speak into the mic and...
Okay, yes. Those who know me know that I've been part of this community on and off for the last 40 years, and much of what was said earlier I concur with. I want to raise one issue. There was one group that wasn't spoken of in this discussion, and that was the situation in Kemptown. We have there the Hyman Fine House, which in 1973, I believe, was created by this community. It's still there, although for many, it could be on the moon. Because those 3 or 4 miles between here and there seems to be a very far distance. Not only that, but especially on Shabbat and Yom Tov, those who do not do not travel on Shabbat certainly couldn't get there. And my hope and prayer is, I was looking at this whole discussion, this residential area which you have in mind. Think about whether it's possible to incorporate something along the lines of an old people's home or a sheltered accommodation or something like that. I say it has a mutual advantage. For me, you just heard the reaction. Additionally, and I've seen this, I've also been around the world, and I've seen different communities reacting, particularly with questions of kashrut. The use of a kosher facility, which could be used all the time, not only as and when, but could be used for the people and with the people, who I think would be mutually supportive and mutually helpful. And one final remark, going back to the chief rabbi, you'll have a minyan every week.
Rabbi Wallach, thank you very much for your comments. Just a few things to say. The first is that Neil Taylor is in the room. Where's Neil? Where's Neil? Well, one second. I'm just trying to respond to the previous question. Neil, where's Neil? Oh, Neil is in the other room. Okay. So Neil is one of the senior people at Jewish Care, and the Bloom Foundation works quite closely with Neil on the Hyman Fine site to try and improve the facilities there, and we are very, very much in favor of trying to improve Hyman Fine's house. In fact, at one point we did consider whether your idea of having the home, a different type of home, but a home nevertheless for elderly people on the site might make sense, and we looked at it. The honest truth is that if we're going to revitalize the community, you have to bring young blood in, and you have to have residential space and congregation, community facilities which will attract young people. And so, whilst we looked at that, we felt that there was a better option. We still, if the opportunity arises in the future to have a new central site for Hyman Fine, then we would certainly consider that in the future. Thank you.
My question was, how does Raleigh Hall
use
fit into this proposal?
Could you just use the microphone, please? Thank you.
How does Raleigh Hall fit into this proposal, if at all?
You already said that. That's right. The answer is that Raleigh Hall, I think, serves a fantastic purpose for the community. I mean, Roger's been incredibly helpful in allowing us to put this evening on together. And this hall is outstanding. We won't have anything like that on our site. So I think Raleigh Hall will continue and serves a great purpose for the Jewish community. And also, I think, has a lot of other non-Jewish events on site which generate an income. So, our focus is, we can't do everything at once. Our focus is very much on Holland Road and trying to create a unifying communal site for Brighton Hove Jewry. Yeah, there's Simon.
Good evening, Simon Seligman. My family have been members of Holland Road Shul for 50 years. However hard it is for me to say so, I am very pro-amalgamation. I feel now is the right time. I'm very disappointed that the chair of Holland Road Shul isn't here this evening. I think it is a very poor... Okay, Okay, I don't want an argument. I just thought I'd bring that up. My question to the Bloom Foundation is, if the board of Holland Road Shul decide not to amalgamate, will this scheme still go ahead?
Thank you. First of all, just to say, Stanley and Michelle are very sorry they couldn't be here. They had pre-planned to be away, so just to clear that. And we, you know, but Stanley, no, we've talked to Stanley. We want to be on good terms with Stanley. You know, he's entitled to his view, and the board is. But you know, our overall perspective is that it's the congregation, as you rightly said, that should make the decision. Yeah, the answer to your question is simply yes. The scheme is going to go ahead anyway. There's nothing which will change. I mean, maybe it'll be improved a little bit. If Holland Road comes on board, they will have a central part in the design of some of the scheme. And that's why coming now means that we can take a lot of the key remnants which will remind us of what it is, the connections with Holland Road. I mean, my father, the last 6 years of his life was at Holland Road. And so for me, it would be a massive thing to be able to take some of those connections to the new site. I mean, this Shabbos was Kalman Fausner's yacht site. I mean, Kalman was, he taught me my bar mitzvah, taught Tony his bar mitzvah. He taught Simon, taught you your bar mitzvah. I mean, he was Holland Road for decades and decades. And if we could preserve his memory by bringing some of the pictures of him and some of the Torah scrolls which he read from, etc., that to me would be amazing, rather than just seeing the building go into a state of disrepair. Next question. Thank you. Doris.
No, this is a slightly different question. It's to do with the mikveh. You're building a big community for the whole community, but is the mikveh for the whole community or only for the Orthodox community?
I think that thank you. The key principle here, which the rabbi outlined, is that the site's an Orthodox site, and so it has to be halakhically Orthodox. So as long as that's the case, I think all other decisions will come off of that, and the same is true for the mikveh. So my sense is that it'll be for the Orthodox community. For everybody, okay, so there you go. That's a better answer than I could have given. So it's for everybody. Thank you.
I think on paper it seems a marvellous development, but we should not be in the business of closing shuls down. But you're talking about Holland Road. There's been talk of amalgamation for 30 or 40 years now. Now, why should Holland Road disappear to join up with Brighton and Hove Hebrew Congregation? Because this is a get-out-of-prison card for them. This development is very favourable for Brighton and Hove Hebrew Congregation. But Holland Road has a fine shul. We've got a lovely rabbi now and a board of management that doesn't need to keep selling off the family assets. The biggest asset that Brighton and Hove Hebrew Congregation has, they're going to lose. Now, okay, if you want to go ahead with this development, get on with it, do it, but leave Holland Road out of the equation.
Thank you. Thank you for your view. Thank you for your view. We agree with you that Rabbi Spitzer is an excellent rabbi and is bringing an enormous amount to Holland Road services. I think the thing that I wouldn't agree with you on is, Holland Road has been a beautiful shul for many decades, and that hasn't reversed the trend. As the chief rabbi said, you need to be daring, you need to be bold, you need to be radical, you need to change things to make a difference, to reverse the decline. And the thing that New Church Road has is a big site in a wonderful location in Central Hove. And so that brings opportunities for all the communal development that we talked about, which will enhance the shul, which you wouldn't have in a standalone shul. So as difficult as the decision would be, we believe it's the right one. That Holland Road shul would not have to close overnight. You know, the joint board could decide over a number of years what should happen. Ultimately, if we're successful, Holland Road might have another communal use, perhaps be a free school in the future. So there's nothing that radically needs to happen at Holland Road. This is about people. It's about bringing the communities together and using the asset, which is a massive site in the center of Hove, to create assets which the community couldn't otherwise have. You have a follow-up.
The other problem is you said before about age of members. Now, we have a lot of old members in Holland Road. Well, I'm not going to schlep all the way to New Church Road.
Yes. Yeah.
We should not be in the business of closing shops down when you still have people coming. We still have people. We can operate very well in Holland Road.
Okay. I think we'll move on to. Listen, you're entitled to your view. You're entitled to your view. I think we've kind of been over the answers to that question already. So, next question. Yes, please, Jackie.
Me.
There's a lady. Oh, sorry, Gail. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Is it? Yeah, okay. Hello, my name's Gail Branch. My family were Holland Road members, as yours is, Mark, and obviously Tony. There is a couple of things that I'm interested in answers to. Firstly, the flats to be sold. We can't specify that they're only going to be sold to Jewish people or sublet to non-Jewish people. Therefore, there is a security risk. Obviously, if you're going to have a shul on site, that's the first thing. Also, renting out classrooms to St Christopher's, because it's going to be on high holy days and that sort of thing. How are you going to broach that with the school and also renting office space? And also, in terms of selling off the family silver with Holland Road, they're actually selling off their car park next door to fund a development on that site. So no one's really having it off in terms of finances. As a business model, there are certain aspects of Holland Road that I think we can take away with, because they are actually working very well in a lot of areas. And jokes aside, in terms of age and everything else, I think it's quite important that we work together as a community rather than make fun of each other. So I think you're doing a very good job. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. In terms of the residential accommodation, it would be open to the broad community. We hope, because it will be in a Jewish community and an Orthodox shul will be on site, that there will be a big enticement for Jewish people to buy some of those units. And in fact, we'll be marketing quite hard through the Jewish press to try and encourage that. The other question you asked about St Christopher's, we'll have a very professional long-term leasehold agreement with St Christopher's if the commercial terms are right. And baked into that will be dates for the high holidays, which we will tell them that they are unable to use their site on those days, unfortunately. So I think we can cover that off.
How are you going to call people up to the law, to read from the Torah, if they're not necessarily classified as an Orthodox Jew, that sort of thing? Are they going to be able to be bar mitzvahs because it's going to cause problems?
There was one other question I forgot to answer. You asked about security, and thank you for asking that. We actually, this afternoon, we had a 2-hour meeting with Lance Ettinger of the CST. Lance is an ex-Brighton boy, known all my life, so it's great to have you involved in the project. And Lance went through a lot of the potential vulnerabilities, and we are going to find a way to mitigate as best we can all the vulnerabilities, and certain things we may not be able to do. But we are absolutely going, before we get to the stage of making a proposal to the council, we will have heard everything the CST has said, and we will take everything they say on board. So the security side is incredibly important to us. On your last question, I mean, it'll be an Orthodox service, an Orthodox minyan, you know, and the Rabbonim and the chairman of the shul will decide who gets called up. So I don't think that's an issue. Next, yep.
Okay. Oh, hello, I'm Karen from Brighton and Hove Progressive Synagogue. Will the community aspects of the development be run by a different legal entity from the shul side of the development? Or will the shul be running the community side under their auspices?
Yeah. Listen, I think a lot of decisions around corporate structure and governance are yet to be taken. The key thing from our perspective is that there's a wide representation of both the religious and non-religious community to oversee, so we can get representation of what different parts of the community want to have in terms of events, education, and so on and so on. And we can therefore get the most creativity and the most representation to inform that programming. The kind of legal side of things, I think, is less important, but we will have to get to at some point.
Hi, David Scheingold. It's really reassuring that we've been invited to a consultation meeting where nothing is yet set in stone. The initial plans have been shown. And it's also reassuring that we're building a number of resources that are going to benefit a strong community. My concern is that at the present time, we don't have a strong community. We have two Orthodox communities. And as somebody said, they've been talking for 40 years about merging. Now, the Chief Rabbi has said in his Rosh Hashanah message, he's talked about unity within the community. And tonight he has said that buildings in themselves do not make a community. So for me, the bit that's missing is how do we build a strong community first? Because if we put the cart before the horse, then whatever intentions you have for this development, it's going to be very hard to implement that. So I would like to suggest, firstly, 40 years is quite significant because, if I remember rightly from the Torah, and I don't normally quote from the Torah, but given that the Chief Rabbi is here, I think somebody should. The Jews wandered for 40 years. They were 12 tribes, and during that 40 years, they became unified. They moved into the land of Israel, and eventually that unification resulted in them building the temple. And the temple was a magnificent building that was the center of the Jewish community for many, many, many years. And even today, there are still parts of the temple that remain. So if you have a strong community building a strong development, then that's going to last for generations, and I do hope it does. The Borehamwood Nelstree congregation, a couple of years ago, they had to decide how they were going to bring their communities together. They produced a consultation document, 35-page consultation document. I'm not going to go through it at all, but what it talks about is how to bring the community together. And there are some really good ideas about doing that. And finally, what I would suggest is that under the stewardship of the Bloom Foundation, that you convene a working group. You have 3 people nominated by the chairman of the Brighton and Hove congregation. You have 3 people nominated by the Hove Hebrew congregation. Those people do not need to be, and probably shouldn't be, board members. And at least one of each 3 should be a woman. And they should get together and in 3 months produce a consultation paper about how we're going to bring the community together. And at that point, if you bring the community together and then involve the building work and the community, I think that stands a much better chance of unifying this community. It deserves to be unified.
Thank you. I mean, you've made some great great points. I mean, the biggest point you made, I think, was that we need to unify as a community, and first, and second, think about the buildings, and I couldn't agree with you more. And a lot of our presentation was really centered on creating the mechanisms which will bring the whole community together to talk about looking at the community center, getting representation, and unifying the two Orthodox shuls. We think that the time has come to take a stand and actually to move forward with this proposal. And because of the history of failed mergers, we think you need to take that step. But absolutely, the community needs to unify as well.
Hey, Mark. So my name's Lawrence Alexander. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm also a member of Holland Road. Like Simon in the 50 Club, we're really worried about our kids and our grandchildren. For me, there are great examples of Brighton Hove community getting together. If you take the Shabbaton, you take the CST, you take things like Sussex Friends of Israel. So there are compelling reasons where this community does come together and unite. We cannot change the past. We can only change the future. And I think that if as a community we don't change the future now, we're dead.
I agree. Okay, I think we have room for two more. And please.
Hi. Well, we moved here about 2 years ago, so I want to say that's actually it's a great thing to see this vision and clearly this sense of kind of dynamism which is being introduced. So we're really positive about that. I was just wondering, in terms of attracting, I think one of the big aspects of your model is attracting young people, young families, and from conversations with friends of mine, a big deterrent. I think one of the big reasons people leave Northwest London or dislodged is for financial reasons. So they kind of go further and further afield so they can afford it. One of the problems with coming somewhere like Brighton and Hove, as great as it is that financially it's pretty expensive. Property is not significantly cheaper. So I was wondering, are there any kind of specific incentives, as I've seen possibly when I lived in Manchester, in Whitefield, that they kind of had incentives for younger families to come. Are there going to be anything like that to try and get a specific age range, demographic, and focus on them? Or is it just going to be more in the sense of hoping that this will attract them? Or is there more specific initiatives planned for that?
That's a great question. So just one stat. The number of people who moved away from London last year was at an all-time high. It was almost 300,000 people. So there is clear evidence of people moving because of house prices. We are hoping when the dust settles that Brighton Hove Hebrew congregation will have a very, very healthy income stream. We will talk with David, and David I know has got supportive views. Rabbi Rader actually mentioned the same thing that you've just mentioned. And there may be a way that in the future we can subsidize and help people. At the moment, it's too early to give that commitment because the development itself is not going to be easy from a financial perspective. But if there is an opportunity in the future, I totally agree with you. That's something we need to consider.
Mark, I don't actually have a question, but I would really like to make a comment. As you know, Michael Harris, I'm joint chair of the Reformed Synagogue in Brighton and Hove. My comment is, I'm slightly jealous. I think all your ideas are absolutely fabulous. I have said on many occasions in my shul, we never change anything because people hate change, but we do innovate. And that's exactly what you're doing. Anything we can do to help you, we're very willing to do, and we would very much like to have discussions with you so that we can take advantage of what you're doing for the community here. Thank you.
Thank you. Outstanding. We have time. We have time for one more question because the man is wearing a Brighton Hove Albion hat. I will take that.
My name's Alan Lever. I belong to BHHC proudly. I'm a regular minion goer, etc., etc. The one important thing you haven't mentioned, exactly the same as our Sunday get-together, was the time factor. You're already on the move. You've already got the plans kind of progressing. You've already approached the local authorities. Please give the audience here an idea of when you think the whole thing to be starting and when it will be complete, and up the Albion.
Okay, yeah, thank you. The plan and the hope is that we will get a decision ultimately from the council sometime around Pesach, maybe slightly later. We will start some works over the summer, and then the community would move off-site after the Hagim next year, and then it will probably be around a 2-year build. So maybe summer 2020 is when we would hope to be on site. Please go. Please go. Ladies and gentlemen, I omitted to say a couple of things earlier in the evening. One is that you should have on your seats a flyer advertising an upcoming event with Mark Regev, the Israeli ambassador, who's coming to Brighton. What date? The 26th of September. So that is he is a great speaker, so that will be an amazing thing. Also, please do fill in your surveys. If you have any other questions that were not answered, you will see an email address. You can send us an email asking those questions. There are also question cards you can leave here. But as I say, this is a consultation process, so we really do want to hear your views. And thank you again very much for coming.